Laugh louder!
So we're caught up in drama. Everybody's talking, everybody's talking. We're caught up in problem. Everybody's talking, everybody's talking.
Hello nerdy viewers out there, Scott and Allison with another bus conversion video for the new year.
Do us a favor and click that subscribe button so you can keep up with our conversion.
Now that we have the roof raised, it's almost on to the fun part.
Building out the interior and building all of our utility systems with our own unique nerdy touch.
But before that, let's get to skinning that bus, crafting those roof transitions, and covering up some windows. You're going to need to grind the paint off the top and bottom of the raised gap. This will be where we add the 3M panel bond, and our new sheet metal will overlap the original body metal.
We also had to grind off a few rivets that the metal was going to overlap.
Next, you'll need to measure out where you're going to place your rivets. Professor Scott here with an educational lesson on rivet spacing, rivet size, rivet length, edge distance, and a couple other handy tips. Let's get to it. The first thing we're going to talk about is rivet size. To calculate your rivet size, you can use an easy calculation of diameter equals 3 times the thickest piece of material. So for example, say we have a 20 gauge piece and a 14 gauge piece of material, we're going to want to take 3 times the thickest gauge. Next you'll want to convert to the nearest 32nd. This will give us 7.5 and we round up to 8, which gives us 8 32nds, which is equal to 1/4, a quarter inch. Now that we have the diameter, it's time to calculate length. Length is equal to the diameter times 1.5 plus the sum of material thickness, which is equal to 1/4 times 1.5 plus our material thickness sum. And then we want to convert to the nearest 16th. And this will give us 7.85. We round up again to have 8/16, which is 1/2 inch. Edge distance is the distance from the top left corner of your material. Standard practice is to use a minimum of 2 times the rivet diameter to a maximum of 4 times the rivet diameter. For an example, if we use our previous diameter of 1/4 inch, if we multiply that by 2 and 4, we get 0.5 and 1 respectively. Our final point is spacing. Rivet spacing is the distance between each of your rivets after your edge distance. It is standard practice to use a minimum of 4 times the rivet diameter and a maximum of 12 times the rivet diameter. If you go too small, you'll start perforating your sheet metal, and if you go too large, you'll start to get bubbles. After you calculate your rivets, it's time to mark up all the pieces of sheet metal. We did this by measuring out one whole sheet, drilling the holes, and then using it as a template for the rest of the pieces. Now it's time to get drilling. We had a few helpers along the way, and I want to give a shout out to my dad, Jeff, and my brother Tim for lending a hand. Thanks guys, we really appreciate it.
When you drill through metal, you can get little metal burrs when you punch through. To remedy this, we used a FAP disc on the angle grinder to make sure everything was smooth.
Time to weld the roof transition tubes in place. We took a last minute change that we saw online and kept the sheet metal from the roof in place. The idea was to add support to the transition skin, but this eventually got in the way during the skinning and we cut them off.
We used a miter saw with a metal cut wheel to cut the angles into our tubes for the transition, and also the angle iron we added to the new raised supports.
Word to the wise, make sure there are no plastic parts on the miter saw you are using because they will melt. The DeWalt saw that we were using had a plastic dust collector and a faceplate that melted.
We used our ratchet straps to help place the sheet metal up to the right height so we could drill a few holes and get it riveted into place.
do a little recap of where we're at on the bus. We got the roof raised. We got the roof raised, and we got these new pieces of bar right here welded in. We got 1.25 inch pipe. We had to get it milled down so it fit inside the hat channel. And then I bought some of these L brackets. Angle iron is what it would be called if you're Googling it. We just tacked those in there, and we're gonna use that to butt the sheet metal up against, and then we'll actually rivet to this to give it extra support so it's not flapping in the wind. If you look along here, after we were done putting up the sheets yesterday, I added a little layer of silicone along the edges just to kind of keep some more seal, reduce some vibration. We got a lot more rivets to put in this side. Right now it's just temporarily riveted to the side. When we put that on, we put down a little bit of panel bond, 3M panel bond. It's a really high strength adhesive. And then we would drill our holes for our rivets. We then would put some silicone in the hole, and then we would put the rivet in and shoot the rivet in. The silicone's there to make it extra waterproof, I guess. The rivets themselves are watertight, they're not waterproof, so we needed to add that in there to reduce any water issues later on. Transition part's gonna be fun. We're gonna need to take some cardboard, get up there, find out what the pattern is so that we can cut it on the sheet metal, and hopefully we have enough extra sheet metal. If not, we're probably gonna use some of the inside ceiling metal. Actually, we ended up getting extra sheet metal for the corners. We stopped at the local air gas store and picked them up.
We overbought and ended up with 4 by 5 foot pieces.
And we only ended up using 3 of them. We're gonna get the other side done today, and hopefully we will be fully sealed up by tomorrow. We have to be out of here by Friday, so it needs to happen.
Yeah, it actually has taken us a bit longer.
We just needed to get the transition walls skinned, and then it's time to cover a few windows. After we nailed down our floor plan, could we really decide which windows we were going to remove.
This time we did use the old ceiling metal. With the jigsaw, we were able to make short work for 8 window areas.
We had to use clamps and really wrestle with it to wedge it up into the space between the awning and the bus body. Speaking of the awnings, we hammered them down to use them as support to the sheet metal to make a tight seal.
Just a few more windows to cover, and then on to welding the transitions closed. This is Dale. Say hi, Dale.
Hello, I'm Dale, and it's coming on Christmas.
Woohoo! Thanks, Santa.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping at your nose.
Luckily, we had leftover metal from the sides, and we used 2 sheets to cover the majority of the front transition and 2 sheets for the back transition.
Word to the wise. When welding to the original bus metal, there is leftover glue between the sheets and it can catch fire. We had to have someone on fire watch while welding those areas.
We overlapped the sheets to reduce drag in the front of the bus, and the bottom sheet was overlapping the top sheet, and then reverse on the back for rain runoff with the top sheet over the bottom sheet, more like a shingle to a roof.
We also decided to custom cut the top sheet of metal after we tacked it up there instead of making a template. However, we did make a template for the side pieces. A word to the wise, get a decent piece of cardstock because the poster board we got was way too flimsy.
Unfortunately, our friend Dale hurt his back on his wild, crazy adventures, and we needed to get this roof raise completed. We were on a time crunch, and lucky for us, Allison's dad came to the rescue.
By the time we had the back tacked up and partially welded, Scott got a little lesson on the MIG welder.
Yep. A little better.
Yeah. Just take the practice and die.
I think I'll let you continue up there.
Okay.
Eventually, I was confident enough to give it a go and finished up the job. The roof raise is done and it's on to the interior.
We're super excited to get this part started and get this build underway.
Please do us a favor, subscribe to the channel below and leave us a comment.